from British colony to the road of independence. Imagine a tiny island with limited land and almost no natural resources. Today, Singapore is one of the world's most developed countries, but its journey to becoming an independent nation was long, complicated, and unexpected. To understand Singapore's independence, we have to go back to the beginning of its modern history. In 1819, Sir Stanford Raffles established a British trading post on Singapore. Because of its strategic location along important maritime routes, people from center of trade. People from China, India, the Malay Archipelago, and many other parts of business, work, and settlement. Over time, Singapore became a highly diverse society with different ethnic groups, languages, cultures, and religions living together. But Singapore remained under British colonial rule. During the Second World War, Singapore experienced one of the darkest chapters in its history. In 1942, Japanese forces captured Singapore. The British surrendered, and Singapore came under Japanese occupation. For the Singa living on the island, the occupation shortages, violence, and enormous hardship. In 1942, Japanese forced Singapore. The British had once appeared came under Japanese occupation. For the people living on the island, the occupation brought fierce shortages, ended in 1945 when Japan surrendered. But the experience had appeared almost impossible to defeat. The British had once appeared, almost image had been shattered. After the war, demands for greater and for bar. In 1959, greater political rights and self-government became stronger. After the war, demands for political rights and self-government became stronger. Singapore gradually moved towards self-prime minister. Then, in 1959, a major political transformation took place. Singapore achieved internal self-government party led by Lee Kuan Yew came to power. Lee Kuan Yew became Singapore's first prime minister. His government faced enormous challenges. Unemployment was high, housing conditions were poor, and Singapore had very few natural resources. How could this small island survive to join its larger neighbor, Malaya? Singapore's leaders believed that a political merger could provide greater economic security and a stronger future. And in 1963, that plan became reality. On September 16, 1963, Malaysia was formed. One possible Singa joined the new federation alongside Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak. For a short time, it seemed that Singapore would face that its future would be part of Malaysia. Political disagreements, economic disputes, and tensions over race and politikadens follow the pacing with the coward. Singapore joined the new federation alongside Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak. For a short time, it seemed that for a decision that would completely begin to fall apart. And within just 2 years, Singapore would face a decision that would completely change its history. Political disagreement, disputes, and tensions over race and political growing conflict between Singapore's government and the federal government in Kuala Lumpur. And within just 2 years, Singapore would face a decision that would completely change its history. Singapore Independence, Part 2, The Separation of Singapore. After Singapore joined Malaysia in 1963, hopes were high that the merger would create a stronger and more prosperous future. But the relationship between Singapore and the Malaysian federal government quickly became difficult. There were disagreements over economic policies and the future direction of the federation. Singapore's population was largely Chinese, while Malay political interest held a particularly important Malaysia's political system. These differences became increasingly difficult to manage, political competition intensified, and tensions between different communities grew. In 1964, Singapore experienced serious racial riots. The violence shocked the population and demonstrated how dangerous the political situation had become. Relations between Singapore and Malaysia continuing each to deteriorate. By 1965 in Malaysia, only to deteriorate. By 1965, the situation had reached a critical point. Negotiations began over the possibility of separating Singapore, a sovereign nation. Then came August 9. On August 9, 1965, now it was preparing to leave. On August 7, 1965, an agreement from Malaysia and become an independent sovereign nation. Then came on August 9, 1965, for Singapore became independent country. The proclamation of Singapore was broadcast to the people. The proclamation of Singapore was broadcast to the people. The Republic of Singapore was born. But independence did not feel like a simple victory. For Singapore's leadership, the future was uncertain. The new country was extremely small. It had limited natural resources. It had a relatively small domestic market, its economy depended heavily on international trade, and it faced serious security concerns. One of the most famous moments came when Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew addressed the public. During a televised press conference about Singapore separated from Malaysia, Lee became independence was not simply a celebration. For him, independence was not simply a celebration, it was enormous pressure. Singapore had not originally planned to become an independent country in this way. But now there was no turning back. The people of Singapore had to build their own future, was that Singapore would not belong to only one ethnic group. Chinese, Malays, Indians, and other communities would all be part of Singapore. The idea of a multiracial national identity became one of the foundations of the country. But political independence was only the beginning. Singapore to answer an even bigger question. How could a tiny island with limited resources survive as an independent nation? The answer would come through an extraordinary program of nation building, economic development, housing, education, and international trade. When Singapore became independent in 1965, its future was far from guaranteed. The country had limited land. It had almost no natural resources. Unemployment was a major problem. Housing conditions were difficult. And the government had to build the institutions of a new nation almost from scratch. Singapore's leaders understood that survival would depend on creating jobs and building a strong economy. The government focused heavily on industrialization. It invested in infrastructure, education, public housing, and economic development. Singapore also worked to attract foreign companies and international investments. Its strategic location made its port extremely important to a major international trade and shipping. The country also built a strong system of public housing. Education expanded. Infrastructure improved. Industries grew. Tenobatanes of improved. Artabix art SWAT, education itself. The country developed a strong defense system and a highly organized grew. And Singapore became increasingly connected to the global economy. At the same time, national defense became a major priority. The government also worked to create a common national identity among people from different ethnic backgrounds. Singapore recognized 4 official languages: English, Malay, Mandarin Chinese, and Tamil. Malay was retained as the country's national language. Trade technology particularly important as a working language, helping people from different linguistic communities communicate with one another. Over the following decades, Singapore changed dramatically. Every year on August 9, Singapore celebrates National Day. The celebrations include the National Day Parade, military displays, cultural performances, aircraft flyovers, and spectacular fireworks. But behind the celebrations was born from unexpected separation. It began with uncertainty rather than confidence. The country had limited resources and faced enormous challenges, yet Singapore's leaders and people chose to build a future instead of allowing those limitations to define them. From a British colony to Japanese occupation to self-government to joining Malaysia, finally to independence, and 19's journey has been extraordinary. Today, Singapore stands as one of the world's most developed and influential small nations. Its story demonstrates that the size of a country. On August 9, 1965, a new nation was born. And from that uncertain beginning, Singapore built a remarkable future. This is the story of Singapore's independence, a story of separation, a story of survival, and ultimately a story of nation building. Happy National Day, Singapore.